Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at Tito'sVodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
Mom, Dad, I humbly suggest you save some money and shop Amazon for back to school. It's for my growth, meaning my body's growing at an alarming rate. And clothes you buy me this year will be very small very soon. Plus, the clothes I love today will be out of style tomorrow. But at least your wallet doesn't have to be my fashion victim if you shop low prices for school at Amazon. Hopefully this is helpful. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
Hey, I'm Brittany. I have a podcast called You Probably Think the Story's About You. It's a true crime narrative. It starts out as a love story. I was on a dating app and swiped right on some dimples.
He just sucked you in. Good looking and seems like relaxed.
And the dimple got
and
me.
And the green eyes. Yeah, you're just screwed.
Through the 8 episodes, it takes a lot of twists and turns that even I didn't expect.
You know that's a lie, right?
Yeah,
We didn't stand a chance against his charm.
There's a lot more to talk about than him. Life is so fascinating because I would imagine we're all full of these threads, and if you start pulling on them, some of them don't quit.
She was like, so you're not going to use his name? And I was like, no. And I was like, because this isn't about him anymore. You probably think this story's about you. It's ready to binge now, wherever you get your podcasts.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, they promise to help troubled teens through a regimen of tough love. In reality, it's a business built on abuse and control. We'll review Teen Torture Inc. from Max Originals. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband, and yes, the love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Thank you for that reaffirmation, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
And finally, our captain of all things cynical, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin.
Yeah.
This is a program.
Mm-hmm.
It's our summer schedule.
Mm-hmm.
What's coming up on future programs of Crime Writers On?
So next week, we're going to talk about the podcast, The Confessions of Anthony Raimundi.
Is it Raimundi or Raimondi?
I thought it was Raimundi.
Raimundi?
I don't know.
I'm going with Raimondi.
Everybody loves Raimondi.
Yes. All right. Well, how's everyone doing? It's been a couple weeks since I saw you last. Toby, how have you been?
It's been pretty hot.
It has. It's hot today.
How is your convalescence going?
That's what's keeping me from having anything more interesting to say. So a lot of hanging out, watching the Olympics. Stuff like that. Yeah.
What events have you been enjoying?
I watched quite a bit of badminton because I actually play badminton. I've watched some team handball, which I like quite a bit. I mean, the track stuff hasn't started yet as of our recording, so that hasn't happened. So Did
you catch Snoop Dogg's coverage of the badminton?
I did catch that on social media. Yeah.
He's great.
Some piercing insights.
Up there, over there, I need that. Over there, I need that.
Up there.
Well, what's weird about the badminton, I'll just say, not that anybody cares, is that in the arena, there's 3 courts that are all next to each other. Mm-hmm. And instead of focusing on one match, they have all 3 in separate windows on the screen. Ooh. But only one has commentary. But then you'll hear the fans are just cheering. So you'll be watching something and then people will be erupting in cheers while the point is going on. And you're just like, what the What is going on
That's just
here?
like gymnastics. That shit happens in gymnastics.
Gymnastics is like the one thing I don't watch.
Well,
So basically, it's like you're inside a Buffalo Wild Wings watching people hit a shuttlecock.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All
I
right.
learned something amazing about men's gymnastics the other day.
What's that?
So in women's gymnastics, they have rotations. So you'll be hearing the music from the floor exercise while you're watching someone do the vault or, uneven bars or whatever. In men's gymnastics, you hear music the whole time. And I'm like, what the fuck is that music coming from? Because men don't have music during their floor exercise. I found out that they play music the whole time to create like atmosphere.
Oh.
So
They got a DJ?
imagine you're up there on those fucking rings, like holding on for your life, trying to stay all stiff. And like having to listen to like fucking Frank Ocean or some shit. And you're like
Up there and it's like, on the ceiling.
just like concentrating. Because that shit takes concentration with it. It's so different than what women do.
They do have DJs for the weightlifting and powerlifting events.
They do?
Yeah.
Did you see what they do for fencing?
No, what do they do for fencing?
It's wild. Like it was like in a villa or something. And so before the match, there's like these huge stairs and then there's a balcony.
Oh, yeah.
And the fencers come out in the balcony and like look over the crowd and then they descend the stairs together.
Yes.
And then walk to where the thing is. And then they've got like the stand. I mean, it's really weird. It would be cooler if they swung down on like a chandelier, but.
So I can tell you why that is.
Why is that?
We at NHPR did an episode on the Olympics on Outside In, on the greenness of the Olympics or like whether or not they are. So Paris decided to build as few venues as possible for these Olympics. So they only built the Aquatic Center and the Olympic Village. And they are going to reuse the Olympic Village for apartments and the Aquatic Center is going to become a community pool. So they are everything else.
Very deep community pool.
Literally everything else. And the equestrian is at a palace.
It's Versailles, yes.
Everything else is a thing that exists. So there's all these.
Surfing is in like Fiji or something.
Tahiti, French Tahiti.
Yes. No, it's nowhere near.
And Colin just 10,000 miles away. Colin Jost has a staph infection on his foot. Like all this shit is going on.
Oh, and his ear. Don't forget his ear.
And his ear, double ear infection. Yeah. So everything is in a repurposed space. It's actually incredibly cool if you think about it.
Except for the speaking of shit, the triathlon had to get postponed. I don't know if it's been canceled or what, but because the Seine is so full of filth that it wasn't safe for the competitors to swim the first part of the triathlon.
That's weak.
Weak tea.
And there was a great article about how the mayor of Paris said that she would go swimming herself to show that it was safe. And she said, I'm going to go swimming at this time. And some genius figured out how fast the Seine flows and how long it takes water to get from different towns to Paris. So there was like this chart about when you had to take a shit in the Seine to have it show up at the same time she was going to go swimming.
Oh my God.
Shit in the Seine, not like run off.
No, you just had to.
Oh man, okay.
Yeah, you had to go in the water or by the side of the water. You take a dump in the river, and based on his calculation, it'll end up flowing through Paris, whereas the mayor is swimming across. So she had to say, actually, I'll do it at an undisclosed time to foil that plan. Anyway, I thought that was like both hilarious and seemed very French.
Yes.
So it's like those algebraic equations, like those word problems.
Yes.
That someone figured out how to put one to good use.
If a mayor gets in the river at 4:00
right.
and you shit in the river at 3:00.
You know you're right if you see other shit going by at that time.
What time will the mayor and your
there'd
shit
just be
collide?
this huge mass, just like
yeah.
Talk about cake in the ocean, right?
Man.
All right.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. And I don't have anything to add. I watched Equestrian. I was so excited. I found how I could watch it on replay, but because like nobody really pays attention to that, there's no consistent commentator. It's like an English commentator, a French commentator, a Dutch commentator, no commentator, all these random things. Sometimes there's nothing, but you get to watch it at least.
I watch the cross country and I watch the eventing because I like to, when the horse gets to that one jump that looks like antlers, I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, that must be scary for the horse.
Yes. We watched, there's 4 hours of it. And my son comes in last night, he goes, what the hell kind of jumps are these? What? And I'm like, it's cross country, Will.
They're meant to scare the horses. That's the whole point.
But I used to do, but not at that level.
All right. Well, I think that we've put off talking about today's topic enough, Kevin. Is it time to discuss it?
It is time.
All right. Let's go ahead and do that and drop that first clip right now. Leading off,
None of our parents could have known. But the reality was they were sending us to some sort of a reverse insane asylum. The abusive ones were the ones in charge.
Their parents think they need tough love to get off drugs and improve their behavior. That's how many adolescents wind up in a facility for so-called troubled teens. Billed as schools or camps, staff members often use violence to maintain discipline or mete out punishment.
When you got there as a new person, your leaders made your life hell. Push-ups, punishments, and they would switch us, open hand hit us, push us around. And their goal was to break you down and make your life hell.
For decades, these programs have resulted in physical and sexual abuse, deaths, long-lasting trauma, and few consequences for staff or management. Only now, after a series of high-profile incidents and celebrity awareness, attention is focused on the loosely regulated industry and its legacy of pain.
It's bigger than it was before. It has more money than it had before. It sounds worse to me than it was before. We have to do something to change it.
Teen Torture, Inc. from Max Originals is the latest title in the growing true crime subgenre about the billion-dollar troubled teen industry. This 3-part series features survivors from a variety of programs. It also looks into the history of the business, the corporations making money off the families, and the political efforts to add some accountability to the industry. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from Teen Torture, Inc. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So Laura, after the program, the series that we somewhat recently reviewed, it's really hard to measure up on an investigation or look into the troubled teen industry. I mean, in my opinion, but watching this, what were your thoughts, having just recently seen the program?
Well, we all know what I'm going to say. Why now? I was like, we just watched the program. That was amazing. I think that was in March that we watched that. And that's one where Catherine Kubler comes back and she's like this really interesting filmmaker who had been at that school, Ivy Ridge in upstate New York. They go back to the facility. They're all there.
Catherine Daniel, real mom died of breast cancer. Yep, that's always my introduction to people. Before I was 2. Oh, this is like my words. Had a lot of nannies. Dad remarried at age 7. I was really happy. Then it started turning horrible.
It's really well done, really intense, really sheds light on this industry in a way that hits you sort of on a visceral level. And this, I'm like, okay, this is just kind of straightforward. It's told kind of basic. There's not a lot of new information here. And maybe it's just because we have also like consumed podcasts and other documentaries about the troubled teen industry. But I was like, and I don't want to diminish the experiences that people had that went to these different facilities. But at the same time, I was like, what's the new information here? What is new here besides like that I want to punch and kill Dr. Phil? What is new here?
Yeah.
And I felt like it was an overview. If you didn't know anything about these schools, it did put a little more emphasis on some of the faith-based ones maybe than we've seen before. But I was just like, why now? And I didn't feel like there was like a cohesive narrative of anybody. Like we were following a few people in a few different places, but there wasn't something that I was like latching onto and invested in as I was watching this in the same way that I was with the program and the people that were involved in that.
So Toby, what makes this different? Because we have definitely listened to, watched, consumed a lot of content about a same topic, like let's say wrongful convictions or pattern evidence or something like that. And it's been very different, textured, told differently, different angles. And, we have in other areas of interest said, I've seen other things like this or about this. So as a result, I don't like this one. Is it because we've consumed other media about this or because this one didn't have the care put into it? I mean, I found myself asking that question. I don't know if you felt the same way. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I could see they've obviously been working on this long before some of these other things came out, like particularly the program. So like, I'm sure that came out and these guys are like, oh man, there's like another one about this before ours hits. So
Yeah.
That probably didn't feel so good. I just feel like there's kind of a certain sameness about these programs, even if like at the very sort of granular detail level, there might be some differences about what the actual punishments are or what motivates these people who run them or whatever. But it feels as though in sort of broad strokes, it's the same experience for these kids, which is they're not really getting anything that's very helpful to them. They're not getting any kind of like actual therapy or whatever. It's just full on like the kind of behavior modification that you would probably do with animals if you worked in a psych lab. And just feels like you're just taking away years of their life by having them in these places where, you know, and of course, the people who are talking, it's sort of a self-selected group. So you're not going to get people who are like, yeah, this is freaking awesome. This turned my life around. But my sense is there's not a whole lot of those people anyway. So you're just constantly hearing from these kids who just at like 14 or 15 or whenever, just without sort of comprehending what was going on, or suddenly plopped in this environment that's really absolutely restrictive, is trying to break you down at a time when you're sort of developing your personality. And so they come out of there broken, right? So that, I guess that's kind of the thing is that it's sort of the same story again and again and again, even if the details are slightly different.
Yeah, I thought the documentary was pretty bland too. You're right. There's nothing that sort of sets this one apart from the other troubled teen industry content that we've seen. And this one in particular seemed like it was a mile wide and an inch deep, where it follows the same playbook as the other TTI content, where it's like bad kids, desperate parents, physical abuse by staff, victims come forward, no accountability, corporations make millions, cut to the credits, right? And it just didn't feel like it was bringing anything new. And I suppose maybe if you haven't listened to any of the 5 or 6 podcasts that are out there that we've reviewed, and the great documentary, The Program, Toby, I think you said like that was the best thing that you've seen that we've reviewed. I mean, like that's very high praise.
Yeah.
So it's going to pale in comparison. If you haven't seen any of that, maybe this is an interesting introduction to it. But even as a rudimentary discussion about what the issue is, I thought there was a lot that was missing. There wasn't a lot of nuance. There wasn't a lot of introspection. We don't have the parents. Like, we didn't really dig into, like, why was mom and dad, why were they so desperate? Did they feel deceived by the camp? Were they taken advantage of financially? How do they feel today when they look at their adult children and they're all upset by this? We certainly didn't get any of the corporations or anybody representing the industry. That would be a hard get. But without that, episode 2 in particular just felt like an assembly line.
Episode 2 felt eternal.
Yeah, it just was an assembly line of different people with similar stories from different places, but really no through line, no connection, as Laura was saying. It just kind of like we're going from red to orange to rose to violet. It just seemed like we were just going to like different shades of the same story.
Well, I feel like this is like one of those situations where you're interviewing one gymnast and all you're talking about is Simone Biles the whole time. I feel bad about that, except I do want to get back to the program for a second, because the program was special because you learned about the industry, but it was also just a good documentary. Like, it had great characters. It had great storytelling. It had a compelling, urgent conflict in the story, aside from what they were telling you, which was Catherine and her father's breakup and reconciliation, attempted reconciliation.
You wrote in your letters. I can read them back to you.
And you know what? That's something you and I are in agreement on. Those programs, and this is why I'm with you on the programs, they manipulate parents. And once, I'm so sorry, Catherine. I am so sorry, sweetie.
And these other people and their relationships with their parents, it brought in scenes from the school, like the riot that happened at the school. It brought in all of this raw material that they found at the school. Like, it was just a fucking good film. I think that you could make another troubled teen industry thing that is as good as that if it's well made. And I think that, like, when something isn't well made, it's in many instances doing a disservice. Like, we listened to that podcast Gooned, which was just awful, because it was just like this droning, like, I mean, I thought it was awful. We didn't all 100% agree on that. But like, the one thing that this does have, which I enjoy, is shitting on Dr. Phil. Laura, I know that you're a huge fan of Dr. Phil, so I don't want to.
I love Dr. Phil about as much as Toby loves Nancy Grace.
So a lot.
It's a lot. I'm like, this guy is just such an ass. And so I was glad that he was called out a little bit in this. Obviously, he wasn't going to say anything. I wish they'd called him out a little bit more. Like, I felt like they could have gone a little bit.
There could be a whole documentary about Dr. Phil and all the damage he's done.
Yeah.
His excuse was pretty weak, right, at the end?
Yeah, what did he say? He was just like, well, Like
Once they leave
we
the
don't know what
stage.
happens when they leave here and they sign all the permissions, blah, blah, blah. But like we see him a lot through the lens of the rapper girl.
Bad Baby.
And how she had gone on the show and everybody like is like kind of like mocking her in a way that she's like this and that. And she has an attitude and she says like, cash me outside. How about that? Or whatever. And everyone's like, whatever. Well, now she's like, looking back and reflecting on this, she's like, I didn't realize I was like actually going on TV. She was 13 years old. She goes to this ranch in Utah, ends up doing like, forced labor. She's on suicide watch. She has to sleep on the floor. I guess what pisses me off about Dr. Phil is the way through his like bravado and sort of bullying tactics and everything that he like gets these parents that need something to gravitate to and something to hold on to when they feel like they are at wit's end with their children. Through that, he's able to lure these people in. But the things that he's sending these kids out to are ridiculous. I did enjoy at the end also when they showed like the list of like, and this show has received promotional consideration from, and then you see all of those places that he's like been supporting.
Yeah.
So,
hey, financial support isn't bad. I mean, like if you want to join us on Patreon and financially support us, that's absolutely fine.
Promotional consideration is brought to us by our Patreon listeners in some instances.
You don't have to go to a camp in Idaho and shovel horse shit for 7 weeks in order to get the thing that you really need.
Nope.
Which is exclusive content.
Amazing exclusive content.
Why are you stepping all over me? This is my thing.
Sorry, Kevin.
We're
in the business section.
This is why I'm so desperate.
Yeah. Do I need to go to one of those camps?
I need to go to.
Send me away?
I volunteer myself as tribute.
Toby's face right now. He's so disgusted with us. Toby's like, don't send Rebecca to that place like from that book Holes.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Hey, look, if you...
You never read that novel Holes, that like young person's novel? It's just like, never
Vaguely.
mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, so if you join us at the leading off level, you get all sorts of exclusive content like the CWO After Show. And on the latest, well, we could have talked about the Olympics in the After Show, but you got that for free. But if you want more content, we're going to be talking about Rebecca's eventful trip on a flight from Chicago, which includes meeting a listener from Alabama and some other guy's screen. And Laura talks about her celebrity encounter with Judy Blume.
Yep.
Are you there, God? It's her, Laura. And of course, Laura has no chill and has to go talk.
It's a good story.
It's a great story. It's a great story. But you also get other exclusive content. You've got Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. You've got Married with Podcast, our advice show. We have Rebecca's Summertime Game Show, Other People's Problems. And we have any events coming up in the Karen retrial. We have episodes of the Readathon. Looks like later this week, we're going to have oral arguments in the motion to dismiss. Should be interesting.
Should be very interesting.
If you join us at the Bricker scale level, you'll get another podcast. It's Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast.
$1 more.
Laura, what do you got coming up on the next episode?
You're going to hear about, anytime I go somewhere, I find a way to get in behind the scenes. You're going to hear about how I got behind the scenes with a Ukrainian rock band.
Oh, sounds excellent.
Not Dave Matthews, though, just the Ukrainian.
Not Dave Matthews, which was not the Dave Matthews of my youth.
Oh, stop it.
Even though Rebecca loved it, I did not.
So if you join us at the Let's Do What We Do level, you get episodes of Crime Runners on early and ad-free. And you'd already know what our thumbs up, thumbs down reviews are for this title, as if you couldn't guess. And if you're supporting us as a deep diver, you get to participate and watch Toby record the deep dive. Toby is going to be doing another live recording the audio on August 13th. And the book is Bright Young Women. Toby, who's going to be joining you to talk about that?
It's going to be fellow Trinity Bantam, Allison Horrocks, and Rebecca Lavoie.
Who's that?
Who dat?
Not sure. A little nervous about it.
Hey, guys, you can support us by going to our Amazon storefront where you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, what are this week's CWO Amazon recommendations?
Well, I really love the iPhone case with the mag thing on the back that also flips out as a stand. Kevin, did you not find that handy when we were at that restaurant last night and you wanted to watch that YouTube supercut and you were like balancing the phone between two plates?
Yeah.
And I was like, Kevin, you know that little circle mag thing flips out and is actually a stand?
Yeah, my life is so incomplete.
Change your world.
Change my world. Toby Ball, what are your listener-inspired Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations?
We got some good ones today. I'm not even sure how to pronounce this. E-cower, sleeveless jumpsuits for women, scoop neck, casual, tank rompers, wide leg pants, overalls with pockets,
Ooh.
navy blue medium.
I need that.
And this one sounds very intriguing. It's the Colorful Life filters for Shark Rotator Pro Liftaway, NV500, NV501, NV502, NV503, NV505, NV510, NV520, NV552, UV560, XFF500, XHF500, but not the Fit NV650 or the NV750S.
Oh, I wanted the 750S.
What is
God
it
damn it.
for? What is it?
Yep.
What does that thing do? Is it a vacuum cleaner bag or something?
It's a Color Life filter for a Shark Rotator Pro Liftaway, which is for the NV500, NV501, NV5. Okay.
Oh wow! It's
filter,
like it's like trying to buy the right like filter for the coffee maker. Yeah.
Jeez.
I don't know. I was worried that maybe Rebecca hadn't caught the whole thing, so I was
All right. It includes sharks. That's all we know. Remember, you can shop us first at Amazon.com/shop/Crime Writers On. We earn commissions on qualified purchases.
Wow. So Kevin, before we end the business section, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Alexa Cook and Tabitha Albright.
Wow.
Bless you.
Bless you, Alexa. Bless you, Tabitha. I love both of those names, by the way. And thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. Thank you for all of our new patrons. We have so many hundreds of brand new patrons. It's so nice to meet you. So nice to see you. Let us know what you like back there. Let us know what you'd like me to do after the readathon, after this whole mess is over. I'd love to talk about something else in quasi-real time. So send me a note on Patreon, and I will look into what you want me to look into. All right, Kevin, does thus end the business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now. So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this podcast?
We're sponsored by Quince.
Quince, my favorite. Oh, my God, my favorite.
Yeah, so...
That's where this is from.
Is it Quince?
Yes. I'm literally wearing a shirt from Quince right now.
It's short sleeve, though.
It's short sleeve.
But it's not really great for autumn. And now we need to make the shift. By the way,
yeah.
How was that summer we just got through?
Amazing.
Yeah, a little eventful. So now it's time to sort of put summer behind and move on to fall, which is always kind of a challenge, like for your closet.
Not for me when I have Quince.
You can get great deals on things like cashmere sweaters.
Hell yeah.
$50. Pants for every occasion, washable silk tops, and so much more. And the best part is that Quince items, they're priced about 50 to 80% less than similar brands, but they also work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes.
You know what I love?
I'm going to rub your shirt here.
This is like
in an appropriate place.
Lightweight gauzy cotton shirt. I love that they show you like how much it would have cost elsewhere and like why they've priced it the way they price it. And so you know exactly why you're getting the value that you're getting. But then when you get it, you're like, this seems way more expensive. Their cashmere sweaters, by the way, gorgeous.
Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials.
Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime. All right, moving on. Kevin, you had an issue with a language in this.
Yeah, because it was English.
Yeah.
Well, you could do a whole other foreign language if they use Babbel.
Babbel! Cool.
Yeah, Babbel. 1 in 5 Americans have learned a new language on their bucket list. And so this could be the time to do it with Babbel. So I've been using Babbel. You can choose from a whole bunch of different languages, obviously, French, German, Italian, but we travel to Mexico not infrequently for vacation. And so Spanish is something that I really would like to maybe be a little more conversational in.
I know you would.
So I've just been doing like these 10-minute lessons, handcrafted. You can, decide what level do you want? Do you want to become fluent? Do you just want to be conversant? Do you want to just do this as a intellectual exercise? And Babbel sets it up in all different ways. Are you ready to hear what I've learned in Spanish?
I'm 100% ready.
All right, this is about you. Mi esposa es muy inteligente. Muy loca.
I am very intelligent and spicy.
Loca?
Crazy?
Yeah. So I'm really liking Babbel, or else I'll just say Pugalies hasta arriba. That means thumbs up.
Nice. I love it, Kevin.
So here's a special limited deal for our listeners. You can get 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/crimewriters.
Crime Writers.
Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/crimewriters. Spelled BABBEL.com/crimewriters. Rules and restrictions may apply.
The all-new season of Futurama is streaming on Hulu.
That's great, but I have to warn you, it's completely brilliant.
The interplanetary hit is back.
The very survival of Earth is at stake. Is everybody okay? Is anybody hurt? Nobody's okay. Everybody's hurt.
Watch the all-new season of Futurama.
That's the best damn show I ever saw.
New episodes Mondays, streaming only on Hulu.
Toby.
Yes.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on our friend, Dr. Phil.
Yeah, in like a just society, he'd probably be in jail. It's just kind of pernicious that he's recommending to parents to send their kids to these programs, which with his resources and I guess closeness to the industry, like he should know that it's not going to work for these kids. And the fact that he's actually taking money from an industry that he then recommends kids go into, or parents spend a ton of money to send their kids to, that just seems like it's not best practices. I mean, maybe it's best practices for Dr. Phil, but just in terms of running sort of an ethical business, that seems problematic. So, you know, I kind of feel like it's kind of in keeping with a lot of those people who run those kinds of shows. I think we've run into Oprah a bunch of times where just not really vetting stuff to the degree that she probably should if she's going to go and advocate for it in front of her audience, an audience that kind of trusts her as like a guide and somebody whose recommendations they should act on. So can't say I'm really surprised. It's not like Dr. Phil shows up in any of these things as like a hero. Like he's always kind of fucking things up, but his outlook on living life must be so different than mine, because I would be racked with like guilt all the time if I was having people do these ridiculous things and just ruining people's lives and fleecing them out of all this money. It just, to me, it just seems incredible.
Yeah, Dr. Phil sucks eggs. Zero responsibility taken for this. But like, remember, like those individual episodes there, that show was designed to give the audience a serviceable villain who needs a comeuppance, right? And provide a solution that adults could enjoy. Oh, send them off to boot camp. Yeah, that sounds rough and it's going to work. But unlike, you know, Maury or Montel, where they would just basically have the mom and the troubled kid and they'd yell at each other, he tries to take it to this extra step because there's also promotional consideration involved. And he has a financial stake. So he's responsible on more than one level here. And like I said, I thought that his excuse was pretty weak.
She had a bad experience. You know, obviously I would hate that. We'd be sorry about that. But we don't have anything to do with what happens with guests once they leave the stage. Whatever happens once they're there, that's between them and the facility.
Montel Williams, by the way, Marine vet and Naval Intelligence Officer vet, by the way.
Okay. Cool.
Just FYI, people don't know that about Montel Williams.
Is that good or bad?
I'm just saying, he's a very interesting guy, and he has MS. He's just a very interesting person. He's in the news lately because he's been defending Kamala Harris because they used to date, and then it's been like put up there as like for some reason, like a political talking point. I don't know. Anyway, I just think he's a very interesting person.
I think there's some problems with casting adolescents as villains on national television programs.
You think?
But it seems to draw in the viewers. But again, I think it's hard for me to wrap my head around like either watching it or being the person who thinks it's a good idea to put this out there.
Well, somebody's made the point that like teenagers, you know, their adolescents are going through difficult things. They're not like necessarily bad. A lot of them are in pain, right? Bad Baby was out there and she was like, you know, she was put there and made to feel like she's villain. Of course, she's backed into a corner on national television. Of course, she's going to lash out with the "Cash Me Outside" and then went viral and stuff.
Did you say the hoes are laughing?
Yep. The whole time I'm looking at him like, this isn't therapy. Y'all are sitting here laughing at me. You're not even letting me tell my side of what's going on.
I see that she's an entertainer now. I don't know if she'd say she has it all together, but I mean, I'm glad that she has something, to go for after that horrible experience. But sometimes teenagers are just teenagers, and it's very difficult. But that doesn't necessarily mean they need to go to a place that hasn't been vetted and it's just violent inside.
Yeah.
Is it ever turn out that it's like, no, actually, Mom, you are a bitch who's ruining my life? And then that's what happens? Like, you need to go to therapy and like leave your kid alone? Is that ever an outcome?
Yeah.
I haven't watched enough Dr. Phil.
I mean, if you go to actual therapy, that very often is the reality. Go, you're going to say, Laura.
Well, I was just going to say, like Kevin was saying, like, what are the actual behaviors of these kids that are going into this? Like, I was a little curious, like, what's actually happening? Because there is normal teen stuff. And there's also parents that are dysfunctional who are escalating situations in their kids. And, you had that one guy in this, Alan, who was talking about, he just didn't know how to talk about the fact that he had been molested. And so he was acting out. And he goes to, Bethel Boys Academy and talks about these horrible things that have happened there. And I kind of felt like, I was like, oh, it was kind of a sad scene when him and the one other guy like go back and they're just out there with their signs all by themselves in the road.
Let's do those two. Okay. The Protect Our Youth for the other ones.
The other ones, yeah.
Let's do 2 minutes of quiet.
Okay. Yeah.
Just peaceful.
But I was like, well, for them, maybe that's therapeutic. But I had questions. And I guess the other thing about this is like, I have friends who have sent their children to different programs. And I'm always like, don't send your kids there. Oh my God. But are there legitimate programs out there? And based on the amount of negative things that are happening at so many of these places, how can you trust any program for troubled teens, right?
Well, this is the thing. And I really think it speaks to something larger. So, at NHPR, we just put out this 3-part series, the Youth Development Center, which is in New Hampshire. The troubled teen industry is essentially a prison. They literally sent kids to an incarceration facility and they called it like a development center, and horrible decades of abuse going on. There's a lawsuit now, which is one of the largest institutional lawsuits about children happening in the history of the United States. It's very underreported. I would highly recommend people listen to the podcast. It's by Jason Moon. It's great. But this really speaks to the issue of there being no social safety net, no programs for mental health or anything that's funded on the government level in the United States. So you have a kid, and this happens, and we've had listeners reach out last time we talked about this. Like, if you have a kid who is really like having emotional dysregulation, like severe like mental health issues where they become a challenge, where they become frightening, or they're having a real break, or they're becoming, expressing things that you literally don't know how to deal with. In an ideal world, you would be able to get help, like actual help. Not have them kidnapped and send them somewhere that you can't speak to them for 6 months, but actually approach it as a family, get help, be able to afford that, because we'd have a healthcare system that was affordable, because we'd have access to services and we'd have access to facilities and we'd have access to transparent pathways to health. We don't fucking have any of those things in the United States. We don't have them.
It's so fucked up. I just have to interject here because I have had friends that have gone through this, and I know of situations where kids, they have to get their children declared independent of them so that the children will qualify for Medicaid, because that is the only way that they can access the services that are out there. Even if they have good insurance through their parents, once they get on Medicaid, then, oh my gosh, then all of a sudden they get like a social worker and they get all these extra services. And I'm like, how fucked up is that?
Yeah.
That you have to do that for your child to actually get help and access people that are going to look out for them.
One of the things that's interesting, Kevin, is a lot of these programs, documentaries, they bring in Paris Hilton because she has become the celebrity spokesperson.
Right.
She's the face, right?
She is. I mean, she's an interesting figure, as an advocate. She goes to a lot of demonstrations, but it doesn't seem like she engages with journalists or documentarians about the issues in a way that like really could advance it.
She testified before Congress a couple times.
Yeah. And for too long, our government has allowed this deceptive industry to operate in the shadows without any real transparency or accountability. No more sweeping this human rights issue crisis under the rug. Our job is to raise awareness by sharing our experiences with abuse, neglect, and even death of a loved one.
Yeah, I mean, I think she does what she needs to do for herself, but I think that she could advance the cause more than just by giving speeches and showing up at different rallies. I don't know. Is she using her considerable wealth to lobby and fund candidates who will reform the industry? I don't know. I mean, we have to respect the fact that she came forward and, shared her truth. But I feel like maybe there is more that she could do if she wanted.
Yeah. So, Toby, the origin story here, Synanon, like the religious thread. Obviously, we can talk about how that's handled in the documentary itself, but that origin story itself, what are your thoughts there? Because there's obviously a lot to say, but like in the current environment, like those connections are still there and they're still very apparent.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you take a program that was designed for something and then you apply it to something that's completely different than that and hope that the results are what the original program was supposed to get. And you can argue probably successfully that Synanon didn't really work in that environment either. It's like just because something may work on one population, like especially if you're taking it from an adult population using it on a population of children, that's probably not a great move. So I thought that was kind of interesting, that part. I think the other thing that kind of ran through all this, and I don't know if they needed to lean into it more or whatever, but it kind of felt like the one thing that kind of distinguished this a little bit was the real focus on this idea of the religious troubled teen industry. And, they talk about the Bethel Boys Academy owned by this fucking idiot named Herman Fountain, who says, God's called me, the state won't stop me, and like basically had his followers keep inspectors from checking out the school. His actual daughter was molested by one of the students and there were no repercussions for him. They talk about Lester Roloff, who was sort of the founder of the whole religious troubled teen industry. And then the Lakeland Girls, this horrifying story about the Lakeland Girls Academy, where administering medicine meant that you didn't trust enough in God to take care of his children or whatever. So this girl dies. So it is kind of like the worst aspects of like religious zealotry sort of applied to the troubled teen industry, which also sucks, into a vortex of just victimizing children in the name of religion. And then you also have this sort of absolute certainty on the part of the people who are running the programs because they feel it's religiously mandated. So there isn't much self-reflection or doubt about their methods. That part I thought was interesting. And maybe if that had been more the focus of it, it would have distinguished it a little bit more from some of these others, and how religion, like these sort of weird religious beliefs about how you deal with kids, has these sort of knock-on effects when it's put into this environment. But it was just like a part of sort of a general overview. My sense was that there were like little nuggets of information in here that I found interesting and got me to think, but it was lost in, a whole bunch of stuff that I feel like we'd been through before. Which again, is it really their fault that we've already experienced this stuff, especially if they started this before a lot of those things have come out? But it does kind of, it kills some of the interest as a viewer if you've already seen it before.
Well, it's like, Toby, when all the books on vampires, remember when everybody was writing vampire books and it was like, now everybody else is going to write a vampire book. Yeah. But I just want to say on that religious thing, the thing that I found like I latched onto that is like Teen Challenge. That is in New Hampshire. Oh, yeah. That is in Manchester. When I worked in Manchester at the Public Defender, I remember we sent, like, there would be clients that would go there because it was like a diversion program. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, so I went on the website, it's still there. And now it's Teen and Adult Challenge.
Oh, good.
What could possibly go wrong?
The other thing I thought was a little bit different about this one that I kind of was like, I can get behind this, is that you did see, besides Paris Hilton, I'm like, whatever, Paris Hilton, but like there was two other people. There was Gloria Allred, and then there was the woman that had been the judge in the Larry Nassar case.
Yep.
I was like, okay, so now we're getting some people that actually are going to like fight in a way that, maybe is going to do something on a bigger global scale for this. But that was about it for me.
Hear that? Yeah, that's the sound of you relaxing, because now you're managing diabetes with the Freestyle Libre 3 system. You get to know your glucose levels and where it's headed. Manage your diabetes with more confidence with the Freestyle Libre 3 system. Ready to learn more about the #1 prescribed CGM in the U.S.? Visit freestylelibre.us to learn more. Based on retail sales data for patients' last full prescription by manufacturer. Refer to the FLAIR NL4 study published in BMJ Open Diabetes Research and Care 2019. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
The all-new season of Futurama is streaming on Hulu.
That's great, but I have to warn you, it's completely brilliant.
The interplanetary hit is back.
The very survival of Earth is at stake. Is everybody okay? Is anybody hurt? Nobody's okay. Everybody's hurt.
Watch the all-new season of Futurama.
That's the best damn show I ever saw.
New episodes Mondays, streaming only on Hulu.
Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at Tito'sVodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
Mom, Dad, you should shop Amazon for back to school and save some money. See, I'm currently obsessed with superheroes and need all the superhero stuff. Superhero lunchbox, superhero backpack. But next year, it'll be something else. Maybe dinosaurs? I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller. But I can tell you not to spend a fortune and shop low prices for school on Amazon. Okay, good chat. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Teen Torture Inc. on Max? Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for this series?
This is a mild thumbs down. I felt like this was a very straightforward documentary. It was 3 parts. I didn't feel like there was a cohesive narrative in terms of people that you were really invested in as you were watching this. And I don't want to diminish what these survivors went through that went to these programs. But at the same time, I just felt like it wasn't organized or structured in a way that made me feel like this is hitting me in the gut as I'm watching this and I want to keep watching and see what happens next. I was like, okay, this is an overview of the troubled teen industry. And we have seen a lot of other media on this that I think tells the story more effectively in terms of why this is an issue. So, I mean, if you really want to be tortured, I don't know, go watch table tennis at the Olympics. No, I'm just kidding.
What?
But yeah, I knew that would get you. Told me. This is a mild thumbs down for me. I mean, if you haven't watched anything else about this, maybe, but the program, which we reviewed earlier this year, is a much better look into this industry and into what happens before, during, and after for people that went there. So mild thumbs down.
Toby Ball.
Yeah, this is kind of a tough one just because if this is the first thing we'd ever seen about the troubled teen industry, I feel like my feelings about it would be quite different. I'd be like, oh, wow, it really shines a light on this fucked up situation. But in fact, since we've seen so many, just a lot of it was spent like, okay, we're going to get anything new out of this. There's a few little bits that were new, but it certainly wasn't enough to carry a 3-episode series. So I don't know. Like, if you've never seen anything about the troubled teen industry, I would probably suggest watching the program. But if all you have available is this, it does a competent job of giving you a sense of what's going on. I guess I give it a thumb sideways. Like, I don't know why you would watch this when there's a bunch of other troubled teen industry stuff that's available. But that doesn't mean this thing is like horrible. It just doesn't rise to the top of what is sort of an increasing number of shows about this.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm going thumbs down. It is hard to compare this with the program, which is excellent. But one of the things that the program had was not only it was much more personal, it was verite. And this just seemed like a bunch of sit-down, talking head interviews, and that the things that we do see sort of out in the real world feel very contrived. The way it's edited belies to me that it was probably envisioned as a network TV or a cable TV show, because there are hard cuts where commercials start to go, as opposed to a documentary series that would naturally flow on Max. And so I think that creates storytelling problems as far as like what the flow ought to be. And it's missing a lot of stuff as far as we do hear from a bunch of different survivors, but their stories are not cohesive. There doesn't seem to be a through line so that we can sort of follow who's who and what's what. And there are missing pieces from things like the parents and the industry. And I know certainly the industry, that's hard to get, but it's like what I say is it's like it needs salt. If you're going to cook for somebody, right, and you go in their kitchen and they don't have any salt because you cannot get the salt, then you're not going to have salt. But you know what happens when you eat the food? It tastes like it needs salt, right? So that's a long way of saying, okay, I get that you didn't have that, but it really feels like it's too bad because it really does need that. So for me, it's a thumbs down.
Yes, same.
Okay.
Thumbs down, watch the program. It didn't do the subject justice. And I don't think it's because, in my opinion, it's not because I watched and listened to lots of other content about this. It's because it wasn't well made. So I'm going to leave it there. Thumbs down for me for Teen Torture Inc. All right. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime
of the Week.
Marine biologists say sharks are testing positive for cocaine. 13 Brazilian sharp-nosed sharks captured near Rio de Janeiro had high levels of blow in their muscles and livers. And we would think any levels of cocaine in a shark system would be considered a high level. Scientists theorize the predators might be absorbing the drugs through runoff from illegal labs or from the excrement of drug users.
Or French people in the Seine, right?
They don't believe the theory, which I'm sure was your first guess, that the cocaine could be coming from actual cocaine, packets that were dumped or hidden underwater by smugglers. It's unclear why scientists are drug testing sharks. Are they applying for a government job or operating heavy machinery? Do they pay to get clean urine from dolphins? Because if there's one thing a ferocious aquatic killing machine needs, it's to be more manic. So panel, why are these sharks on cocaine? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
Well, if they have to keep singing Baby Shark over and over again, they need to have a lot of stamina and a lot of energy. Toby, you want to sing it? Baby Shark. Da, 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 da. Come on, Toby.
I don't know that tune.
You don't know the Baby Shark song?
Thank God.
Baby
No.
Shark. Da, da, da. So, I mean, that's manic right there, that song.
It is. Toby, why do you think these sharks are on cocaine?
Well, I think they probably saw a cocaine bear and thought that looked pretty fucking sweet and jumped on it in an aquatic form.
Kevin, why do you think these sharks are on cocaine?
Because they got to stay up all night to finish their manuscript on deadline.
Oh, well, yeah, that's an excellent point. All right. Laura Bricker, I have a question for you before we end the podcast. Do we have a cat of the week this week?
Let's see. In honor of the shark one, I'm going to do Maxine the Bearded Dragon.
Oh, I love me a bearded dragon.
Yeah. So anyway, this comes to us from Judy King. Judy says, "This is my daughter's bearded dragon, Maxine. She rescues these and rehomes most of them. Probably around 50 have been through her house. She has enough pets that she refers to her house as the zoo. Here is a more complete list of the pets she has. Currently, Maxine and Morwen are the only bearded dragons, but there's a gecko, a tortoise, a mountain tortoise, 2 I can't even pronounce
Axolotls?
Yep. In addition to 3 cats and 2 dogs and the hermit crabs. She is known to many as the lizard lady, and children love them and her."
Nice.
So Maxine the Bearded Dragon is hanging out on the couch with a little pillow, just kind of chilling around the house like, yo.
I'll say you, Maxine is pretty cute, and bearded dragons can be pretty cute. Look
There you
at that
go.
little Maxine. All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to submit their animals to you to be Cat of the Week, of course, you can email them to us at crimewriterson@gmail.com or put them in our Facebook group. But how could they reach you on social media?
They can find me at Laura Bricker.
Toy Ball, how can you be found online?
At Toby Ball and H.
What about you, Kevin?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
If you want to follow me everywhere, mostly Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can follow the show at Crime Writers On, but mostly I encourage you to join our incredible community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. Just go to Facebook. We've got a pinned post on how to join the group. Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll get everything else we make back there. It's a really good deal. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the wonderful Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this program is sitting next to me. His name is Kevin. This show was recorded in Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where we also think Dr. Phil is an enormous dick. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later. Leading off, speaking of things that scare people, Their parents think they need tough...
Speaking of floating pieces of shit.
Partners in Crime Media.
Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at Tito'sVodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.